Tonight, Westminster isn't just rattled, it's bleeding secrets. A political shockwave has erupted after what insiders are calling the most explosive alleged WhatsApp leak in modern Labour history. Not rumours, not whispers, but a flood of private messages that, if genuine, expose a world of hidden strategies, bitter internal rivalries, and conversations that were never meant to reach the public eye. Within minutes of the alleged leak hitting social platforms, the calm mask of Labour leadership shattered and a storm began rolling straight through the heart of Keir Starmer's inner circle. What follows is not just a scandal, it is a political reckoning. By the time the sun dipped behind the grey skyline of London, the damage was already done. Screens across the nation lit up with notifications, each one pointing to the same shocking headline, an alleged WhatsApp leak linked to Keir Starmer's top team. At first, people assumed it was another smear attempt, a digital ghost swirling around political season. But the sheer volume of messages, the detail, the timestamps, the tone, it all felt too precise to ignore. And within hours, insiders began to murmur the words that turned suspicion into fear. It looks real. As the alleged screenshots spread like wildfire, they painted a picture that the public had never been meant to see. A picture of frustration, power struggles, strategic manipulation, and quiet contempt behind closed digital doors. Some messages appeared to show senior advisors mocking internal critics. Others hinted at private discussions about voter psychology, phrased in ways that ignited instant outrage. None of it was verified, none of it confirmed, but the possibility alone was enough to set Westminster ablaze. Inside Labour HQ, the atmosphere shifted from routine to crisis within minutes. Phones vibrated non-stop. Staff huddled in corners whispering, trying to understand who had access, who could have leaked anything, who was still loyal. The corridors that once echoed with political chatter now buzzed with fear, a suspicion, and the creeping realisation that the storm was only beginning. One staffer, according to reports, walked out pale and shaken, muttering, "If this is real, everything changes." Others scrambled to lock down devices, wipe accounts, secure servers. Actions that only intensified public speculation outside the media descended like hawks. BBC, Sky and independent reporters swarmed the gates of Parliament, shouting questions that cut like blades. Is Starmer responding? Is the party compromised? Are more leaks expected? No one had answers. No one dared to speak. For the first time since Starmer's rise to power, silence became the loudest sound in Westminster. Meanwhile, social media spiralled into chaos. Hashtags erupted across every platform. Labour leak, Starmer messages, truth or trap. Citizens turned into digital detectives, dissecting every screenshot, every sentence, every emoji. Analysts compared writing styles. Political commentators debated authenticity live on air. Supporters begged for clarity. Critics demanded resignations. And through it all, Starmer himself remained unseen. A silence that only deepened the suspense. But the most unsettling twist came late into the night, when an anonymous political reporter revealed that the alleged leak might not have come from hackers, foreign agents, or outside forces at all. According to whispered sources, it may have originated from inside. Someone close to the leadership, someone with access, motive, or moral conflict, someone who had finally broken the code of silence. And if that was true, then this wasn't a cyber attack. This was a rupture from within the Labour machine. Suddenly, trust dissolved. Every advisor was now a suspect. Every message felt like a weapon. Every silence felt dangerous. The party that had fought to present itself as unified, disciplined, and in control now looked like a fractured empire on the edge of implosion. The alleged leak didn't just expose conversations, it exposed the fragility of power. By the end of the night, one thing was certain: whether the messages were authentic or manipulated, the political damage was real, the public outrage was real, the fracture inside Labour was real. And for Keir Starmer, a leader who built his image on order and integrity, this alleged leak had become the one thing he could not manage, predict, or outrun. Westminster braced for the next blow because everyone sensed it. This was only the beginning. By dawn, the alleged leak had evolved from a political disturbance into a full-scale crisis, the kind that forces governments into defensive mode and sends shockwaves far beyond Parliament's stone walls. What unfolded next felt less like routine politics and more like a thriller tearing itself open in real time. Inside Labour headquarters, panic was no longer whispered. It was visible in every rushed step, every slammed door, every advisor gripping a phone with white knuckles. Keir Starmer convened an emergency meeting before sunrise, gathering his highest-ranking strategists around a long wooden table that suddenly felt like a witness stand. The room was tense, eyes shifting, hands trembling as Starmer demanded clarity regarding the alleged messages. But clarity was the one thing no one could provide. Devices were checked, logs reviewed, timelines reconstructed, yet every answer led to more questions, and every attempt at explanation only deepened the already growing suspicion that someone on the inside had detonated this political bomb. Outside, the media frenzy intensified. Journalists camped outside Labour HQ, their breath fogging in the cold morning air as they awaited a statement that never came. Camera flashes lit the street like lightning bolts. Analysts filled the airwaves with speculation, each theory more dramatic than the last. One insisted it was a coordinated internal coup. Another believed the alleged leak was part of a broader political manipulation campaign. A third quietly suggested that foreign intelligence might be waiting to exploit the chaos. But the most terrifying possibility, the one no one wanted to say aloud, was that more leaks might still be coming. And that fear became reality when, before noon, a second batch of alleged messages exploded across Twitter and encrypted channels. These messages were darker, more strategic, more damaging. If the first wave had revealed arrogance and contempt, the second wave hinted at something deeper, deliberate narrative control. Several of the screenshots appeared to show discussions about shaping media coverage, steering public perception, and silencing internal critics who threatened party unity. The reaction was immediate. MPs recoiled. Commentators accused the party of betraying its own democratic principles. Members of the public, already shocked by the initial leak, now felt something closer to betrayal. The words being circulated, again, unverified but explosive, painted an image of leadership operating behind a curtain, pulling levers that the public never knew existed. One alleged message sent from an unnamed advisor referenced the need to neutralise dissent before conference, a phrase that ignited outrage across social platforms. Another allegedly described Northern voters as emotion-driven and predictable, a line that spread like a wildfire nobody could extinguish. Each message, whether real or fabricated, carried the weight of political devastation. Inside Parliament, chaos seeped into every hallway. MPs exchanged tense glances, some furious, others frightened. The Speaker's office was pressured to address the crisis, while multiple committees quietly prepared for the possibility of a formal inquiry. Even members of Starmer's inner circle were seen retreating into closed rooms, phones pressed to their ears as they scrambled to manage communications spiralling out of control. Opposition leaders seized their moment. Conservative MPs called for full transparency. Reform UK declared the alleged leak a national alarm bell. Commentators on live television argued that Starmer's authority had been shattered, whether the messages were authentic or not, and as the political firestorm grew, another player stepped into the arena. Buckingham Palace, a senior royal aide speaking off the record, confirmed that the palace was monitoring developments closely. The reasons soon spread across digital channels. Among the newly circulating alleged messages were lines that appeared to mock royal traditions, dismissing the monarchy as a decorative obstacle in modern governance. The reaction was instantaneous. Royal commentators expressed shock. Supporters of the crown accused Labour of disrespect. Even neutral observers felt the tremor ripple across the nation. When the monarchy begins paying attention, the crisis is no longer just political. It becomes constitutional. But the chaos didn't stop there. Cybersecurity experts warned that the structure of the alleged leaks, timed, coordinated, escalating, resembled something intentional, almost theatrical. Anonymous accounts on Telegram began teasing additional drops. One message simply read, "This isn't even the full truth," and that single line sent social media into meltdown. For the first time, even intelligence services were rumoured to be observing the situation from afar, wary that the crisis could spiral into national instability. Through all of this, Starmer remained largely unseen. emerging only once to deliver a brief, controlled statement dismissing the allegations as political sabotage. But the public wasn't persuaded. The nation wasn't waiting for carefully worded speeches. They wanted transparency, accountability, answers. Instead, they got silence, suspicion, and the looming threat of more revelations waiting to ignite. And by midday, the atmosphere across Britain had shifted completely. This was no longer a question of whether Labour could contain the damage. It was a question of whether the party could survive the storm that had only just begun to break open. What happened next was something no one inside the palace had expected, not the advisors hiding behind protocol, not the senior courtiers whispering predictions, not even the royal press team scrambling to rewrite the narrative before it reached the world. Because the moment the dust settled from the initial shock, a second wave of chaos emerged. Quieter, deeper, and far more dangerous. Rumours surged through the palace corridors like a cold wind, each whisper sharper than the last. Old alliances cracked, hidden resentments surfaced, and loyalties that once seemed unshakable suddenly shifted like sand. Some claimed this was a bold move toward restoring dignity to the monarchy. Others murmured that it was a reckless gamble that could fracture the institution beyond repair. And as the palace lights burned through the night, one truth became impossible to escape. Nothing about this was accidental. Behind closed doors, a silent war was unfolding, one driven by symbolism, power, and the invisible pressure of public expectation. Every portrait on the wall, every headline pulsing across the world, every advisor called in for a private discussion became part of an escalating narrative too big to contain. Across the nation, reactions ignited instantly. Supporters hailed it as a moment of long overdue clarity, praising the courage it took to challenge traditions that had grown stale and suffocating. Critics, however, accused the royal household of spiralling into internal conflict, claiming personal rivalries were now being disguised as official decisions. Social media erupted. News studios scrambled to get experts on air. Commentators dissected every frame, every gesture, every rumour. And in the eye of this storm stood two figures, one rising, one fading. One representing the future, one tethered to the past. The tension didn't just shake public opinion, it sliced straight through the monarchy itself, exposing fractures that had been quietly growing for years. And as the palace attempted to regain control of the narrative, something even more dramatic emerged, a series of leaked memos suggesting that this move, the removal, the unveiling, the symbolism, was part of a much larger shift happening behind the scenes. Not a moment of anger, not a personal preference, but a strategic realignment within the monarchy. A rebalancing of influence, a recalculation of legacy. Advisors panicked, journalists dug deeper, and the public held its breath, because if the leaks were real, then this wasn't simply a royal reshuffling. It was the opening shot in a struggle for the future image and power of the crown. And with every hour that passed, the consequences became clearer. The royal world had crossed a threshold, and there was no turning back.